Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an exciting day at the Islamic Center of Southern California, is it not? Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Senator Sanders, let me first, of course, extend a warm welcome and thank you for being here at the Islamic Center of Southern California. And let me say, we hope this is not your last visit to the Islamic Center of Southern California. You are the first presidential candidate in over 30 years since Reverend Jesse Jackson came in 1988 as a presidential candidate to visit us, and we are grateful. Now let me say at the outset, per IRS regulations, we cannot endorse, do not endorse any candidate running for any public office. And we welcome all presidential candidates, including Donald Trump, to come to the Islamic Center of Southern California. And IRS rules require that I cannot show any excitement about Senator Sanders being here, but trust me, I'm excited on the inside. Senator Sanders, your visit here today provides comfort at a time when the Muslim community is still processing the grief of New Zealand. And even though that attack occurred an ocean away, what has made it uniquely difficult for us as a community, uniquely painful, is the day on which it occurred, the time at which it occurred, and the location at which it occurred. It was the weekly congregational Friday prayer, the Jummah prayer for us Muslims, that very special half an hour or so where we get to connect with our Creator, to put our life's challenges in perspective, where we can have a soulful engagement, not only with the Almighty, but with each other as community members as we stand shoulder to shoulder and foot to foot. We are still processing the pain. We are still processing it with tears and prayer. The attacks played out on TV, on our smartphones, and on our computers, and with every scroll, we could not help avoid it. But the same type of reporting cannot be said for our Uyghur brothers and sisters in China. Even though the United Nations has said over 1 million of them have been put into re-education camps, they do not get the same media play. They do not make the evening news. The same cannot be said for Muslims in Yemen, who are suffering the worst catastrophe and famine on earth, caused by a corrupt regime in Saudi Arabia. The same cannot be said for many places in the Muslim world. But while we must certainly process our grief of New Zealand and our other places of pain, I say to my fellow believers, I say to our fellow Americans, let us not stay in that sorrow for too long. Let us not stay there for too long. Let us remember and honor the victims always, but let us slowly but surely pick ourselves up. Let us move forward, encompassed by the love that we have received, that far outweighs the hate that we have seen. And as we move forward from the pain and the sorrow, let us realize something for us as Muslims in these United States. It has never been a better time to be a Muslim in America. It has never been a better time to be a Muslim in America. Despite the fact the President of the United States says Islam hates us, it has never been a better time to be a Muslim in America. Why? Because we get to work. We get to contribute. It is a blessed opportunity to be able to do so. We get that opportunity to work not only for Islam, but for the United States. We get the opportunity to combat white supremacy. We get the opportunity to uplift the homeless and the poor. We get that opportunity to create social harmony and economic justice. We get that blessed opportunity to work with our Jewish brothers and sisters to fight anti-Semitism. God has blessed us to be here at this point in our nation's history and at this point in each and every one of our personal histories. for a nation that we love, for our short period here on earth. Finally, let me paraphrase something that was said by Van Jones at the Muslim Public Affairs Council convention last year. He said the following, quote, "Sometimes God picks a people and puts a burden on a community not to destroy them, but to develop them so that they can do something magnificent in his eyes. The American Muslims have been called. They have been called to save a great faith and a great nation at the same time." Senator Sanders, if you are elected president, we Muslims and all people of good standing, we will roll up our sleeves and we will get to work. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. My name is Salam Al-Mariati. I'm the president of the Muslim Public Affairs Council, and I thank you for this forum on what happened in New Zealand, xenophobia, and gun control. And before we get to the senator, I'm sure all of you are waiting anxiously to hear from him. We wanted to hear from our interfaith partners and our religious leaders here in Southern California. So each of them will speak for 2 minutes. This is their religious covenant to me. And then we will get to the senator. So first, we will have the president and chairman of the Shura Council of Southern California, who just landed 2 hours ago. He was in New Zealand, and he is here to tell us what the sentiment is there and how we can continue to build bridges with the people of New Zealand and the Muslim community in particular. Please welcome Ahmed Sow.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everybody. It's absolutely an honor and pleasure to be here this morning, especially after my short trip that I spent in Christchurch in New Zealand for the past several days. Senator Sanders, thank you very much for giving this time to us and being with us this morning as well. When you see Senator Sanders on TV, you think he's a great man, but when you meet him in person, you can assure and you can be confident that he's not just a great man, he's an awesome man. So we're going to last Wednesday, in a very quick decision that was made, a delegate from the Muslim community of Southern California decided to go and visit the community of Christchurch in New Zealand. So we took the flights and we traveled, and it was just an amazing experience for us. We went for several reasons, mainly to support the Muslim community of Christchurch town in this tough time that they're going through, to see the families, to talk to the ones who lost loved ones, to visit the hospitals and see those many who were injured, and they are in critical situations, and they were first-hand witnesses on the tragedy and the massacre that happened. We got to listen to them, we got to talk to them, we got to talk to parents, fathers, mothers, children, brothers, wives, husbands. It was pretty tough to listen to all these people. But they were strong and they were resilient. And we also went to show our support and thanks and gratitude to the people of Christchurch, to the mayor of Christchurch. Actually, we took with us a letter of support and condolence to the mayor of Christchurch from the mayor of Los Angeles, from the Islamic Shura Council of Southern California, on behalf of the Muslims of Southern California at large, to tell them that we appreciate what they've done, to tell them that they're role model and examples for everyone in the world in how to do in such a situation. The points of discussions are really long, but I really like to wrap up with really important 2 points. It is very important for us to understand that our politics in America are not limited to the boundaries of the United States. Whoever's going to be in the White House is affecting the whole world. If it's up to me, I'll let the whole world vote on the presidential elections of the United States, because it does make a big difference on their lives. Thank you very much for being here.
Next, we have the founder from the Muslim Youth Group and alumni, member of the Muslim Youth Group alumni.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you. Good morning. The terrorist attack against the Muslim community in New Zealand was the outcome of white nationalism and anti-Muslim rhetoric that circulates in America. Muslims continue to be otherized and demonized by those who are supposed to be our leaders. The ignorance of those leaders perpetuates the rise of Islamophobia. And this trickles down to different communities in America, getting passed on starting within our homes and in our conversations with our children. Growing up in America as a Muslim, I've experienced it all. Being labeled a terrorist, people shouting for the removal of my hijab, and being told to go back to quote-unquote my country in public spaces. Every young Muslim has experienced at least one of these attacks, and it needs to stop because it fuels the hatred for Muslims. Young Muslims need to feel proud of who they are in America. I continuously hear that young people are our future. However, we should not pass on the injustices that occur in this country. It's our job to find solutions for these problems now. And seeing the support and the love from non-Muslim communities gives me hope that we can change the state of our union, state of our nation with our generation. I want to thank Senator Sanders for using his position in office to work for the people, rather than the other way around. History shows us that people make a change. And I hope we take direction from those exemplary movements to fight against ignorance. The unity between different communities creates change, and we are more unified than ever. So let us move forward in this way together, and let's make something happen. Thank you.
Next, we have John Cager. He's the pastor of First AME Church and president of the Los Angeles Council of Religious Leaders.
Thank you. I'm the pastor of Ward AME Church and the president of the LA Council of Religious Leaders. And we want to say thank you to the Islamic Center and to the Muslim Public Affairs Council for having this event. On June 7, 1776, Richard Henry Lee, one of the founding fathers of America, was making the impassioned plea for America to declare its freedom. And he said, true freedom embraces Muslims, Hindus, as well as the Christian religion. America is built on the notion that none of us is any better or any worse than the rest of us. We're not a melting pot, we're a salad bowl. And a salad that is all lettuce is awful. If the Christians are the lettuce, we need the Muslims to be the tomatoes, and the Jews to be the radicchio, and the Hindus to be the onions, and the Sikh to be the dressing. And when we put it all together, we are a nation with great flavor and great taste. We can't let the forces of hate and divisiveness turn us just into a plate of lettuce. We want to retain our flavor and our fruitfulness, and that is with us all embracing each other, working together, and appreciating that both the lettuce and the tomato have a role.
Thank you, Pastor. I'm hungry now. Hungry for justice. I want to acknowledge the leader of the Shia Muslim Council of Southern California, Imam Mustafa Qazwini, and the president of the Muslim American Society National, Ahmed Azam, who are also with us today. Next is Rabbi Susan Goldberg, one of our partners and has been with us for many years. Thank you.
I bring you greetings from the community of your Jewish brothers and sisters who are in this time of mourning and support with you. As I I share, as you know, that my house of worship is down the street, our synagogue, and yet other than the synagogue, this is the other house of worship that I am in most frequently. To study together, to dialogue with each other, to share prayer, to share support, and unfortunately, all too often to respond to these terrifying, tragic events that are happening to our communities. Today is the Sabbath for the Jewish people, so I also bring you greetings of the Sabbath, Shabbat Shalom, a time where we sink our feet deeply into the foundations of our tradition so that we can take all that there is, that our shared traditions teach us, our holy days, our holy spaces, ask us to step outside of the world for a moment so we can immerse ourselves in what is most true: compassion, justice, love, mercy. Not so that we hide out in these places, but so that when we cross the threshold out of our holy days and into the holy space of the world, that we take what we know to be true with us. It is terrifying that white supremacists, carriers of guns with hatred in their hearts, are entering into our houses of worship and murdering us while we pray. But it also makes sense that that is the place that they want to attack, because these holy spaces are where we immerse in what is most true. And it is that we will not let go of. We will not let go of knowing that our lives are to be rooted in love, in compassion, in justice, in kindness, in truth. And so it becomes even more sacred, the times that we spend together in our houses of worship. Not so that they separate us, but because they change how we act when we walk out the door. So each of you today, when you go to where it is that you pray, many of you come here, you go to other mosques, there may be people of other faiths here. We are now compelled, every time we cross the threshold into the world, to make sure that we are carrying with us the deepest values of our tradition and making it so that all of our personal interactions are filled with those. The way we treat our kids and our teachers and our parents and our grandparents, and the way that we shape our nation. Now is the time, more than ever, that the values we hold most true is what we will make America to be, because we know that it is not right now. We know that painfully so. So with our mourning and with our prayers, we walk with justice, love, mercy, and compassion. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much, Rabbi, reminding us that this is a struggle for pluralism and coexistence. This is what our cause is about, and we cannot do it alone. We have to do it together. Pittsburgh, Quebec, Oak Creek, it's all the same. We are one people. Interfaith is a part of our faith. To be the one to be the cleanup of this great panel, we have our former chair of the Muslim Public Affairs Council and former chair of the Islamic Center of Southern California, Hidab Tarifi.
Assalamu alaikum. May God's peace and blessings be upon each and every one of you. Welcome, Senator Sanders, your wife, your daughter, your team to the Islamic Center of Southern California. As you take your campaign throughout California, we are honored that you chose ICSC to meet with the Muslim community. ICSC is a major interfaith hub in the city of LA, and we are honored to have our interfaith partners joining us. In Los Angeles, we are one family. We come together in solidarity and support when one is hurt. We also come together to celebrate our diversity and common humanity. What unites us, besides being Angelinas of faith, is our love and commitment in working together to make our world a better place for the new generations to come. If not the world, at least our country and our beloved city of LA. Senator Sanders, they attacked you by calling you a socialist. In their narrow minds, they thought they were calling you, and I quote, communist. Little they knew that this socialist spent decades of his life fighting for their rights and mine. Little they knew that this democratic socialist is calling for economic equity among all people, so everyone not only survive, but they have the ability to thrive. Working on exposing the control of the 1% on the wealth, leaving the 99% behind with a huge gap in between that no longer even holds what used to be a middle class. Economic equity can be found easily in Islamic economic model of encouraging and protecting individual rights to private property, ethical commercial and capital growth, while at the same time placing rules for the less advantaged, such as zakat and charity, so that there is no economic disparity. It is about time for the rich and elite to step down from running and literally ruining our country by benefiting themselves and the other 1%. It is about time we all support a government by the people, for the people. Thank you, Senator Sanders, and God bless.
Thank you, Dad. And when our tax dollars go to subsidize the corrupt and greed of the highest financial institutions of our country, is that socialism? What is it that we are actually calling socialism these days? We are tired of the inequities of our society, and we're struggling for socioeconomic and political justice for our society. That's what this group represents. Please give them a hand for their wonderful work. I think all of you know much about the senator, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So I don't need to say very much about him. I want to say something about us and what this represents. American Muslims are an invisible voice in America. We are not given the microphone to talk about Islam and Muslims. Usually others talk about us. And Senator Bernie Sanders is the highest U.S. official visiting a mosque and Muslim community after New Zealand. So we thank him for being with us. The president is patting himself on the back for the defeat of ISIS without acknowledging the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of Iraqi, Syrian, Kurdish lives that laid down to sacrifice in defeating ISIS. We are saying that the Islamic scholars who condemned ISIS, the Muslim leaders who pushed back against the cult of death, were instrumental in the defeat of ISIS. So we are saying here, once and for all, for our American leaders to acknowledge and appreciate that Islam led to the defeat of ISIS. And rather than preaching nonviolence over there, let us practice nonviolence here and end the double standard on the politics of violence. Senator Sanders has been a leader against militarism and war, corporate greed and sexism. He is that progressive voice that was there before it became cool to be progressive. He is our leader today on the front for social and economic equity. He is the son of a Jewish immigrant, and so he knows what Muslims are going through today, because anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim animus are one and the same. He is a leader of the civil rights movement for many decades. So please welcome the Honorable Bernie Sanders.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all for inviting me to be with you this morning at the Islamic Center. And let me introduce to you my wife, Jane. My daughter, Karina, is here somewhere. There she is. Let me do something that I have been criticized for not doing as a politician and be a little bit personal. I don't like talking about myself very much. I much prefer talking about ideas and vision, but for me, given the moment that we're in and the tragedy that took place in New Zealand, let me just say a few words about myself. There were two forces, I think, that shaped my political views. One, that I grew up in a family that did not have a lot of money. And the pressure of not having money on my family is, I think, the same pressure that exists for millions of families throughout this country and people in this room right now. It's moms and dads worrying about how they're going to be able to provide for their kids, arguments about you spend money on this and you spend money on that, and kind of causing tension in the house. And also, as a young person, seeing that there were other families that had a whole lot. One of the dreams that my mother had as we grew up in a 3.5-room rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn. What she wanted is, I think so many people in America, that she wanted a home of her own, not to live in an apartment. And she died young from a heart ailment, and she never achieved her dream. So she never had that home of her own. So growing up in a family that struggled economically certainly shaped my views about politics and where we might want to be going as a country. But the second part of my life that shaped my views was being Jewish, is being Jewish. And crying when I would read books about the Holocaust, these picture books of what happened at Auschwitz and the other concentration camps, and tears would shut my eyes. And it never occurred to me, I never could understand why would people do such terrible and horrible things to people. And then you get a little bit older, and you study history. You study our own country and what happened to the Native American people, terrible things that happened to them. We study about the abomination of slavery and the segregation and racism that our African American brothers and sisters experienced. We study about the fact of the prejudice against the Irish and the Italians in this country, against the Asians, so many Asian people here in the West Coast. And many of you should be familiar with the so-called Asian Expulsion Act, the terrible prejudice against our Asian brothers and sisters. And after all of that suffering, after all of a horrible 20th century, which has seen a number of genocides, one might have hoped and believed that maybe, just maybe, the world would understand that we share a common humanity. That who really stays up nights worrying that the color of your skin is darker than mine? Who worries that your religion is different than mine? Every person in this room, and I've got 4 kids and 7 beautiful grandchildren, every person in this room wants their children to have good health. Every parent worries about what happens if your child becomes sick. Every person in this room wants our kids to have a quality education, to grow up, to be as wonderful and as smart as they can be. Every person in this room wants our kids to be able to drink clean water and to breathe clean air, and not to see this planet destroyed by climate change. Every person in this world holds that belief, that hope for their children. I was thinking so hard about what I could say about the tragedy of New Zealand, and I wish I could tell you something profound, and I just can't. The only thing that I perhaps can say is, out of that terrible tragedy, where people were slaughtered because of their religion, is that hopefully in our country and around this world, and let me just say this, in my view, what the promise of America, for my father who came here with nothing in his pocket at the age of 17, what the promise and the belief of this country, and where people all over the world have looked to this country, is the belief that we are a nation which believes in diversity. We are a nation that welcomes that salad that the pastor talks so beautifully about, that we learn from each other, no matter what our religion, what the color of our skin, what country we came from. In fact, what a wonderful advantage to learn so much that we can learn from each other. Your background is different than mine. What a joy it is to share that. So in this difficult moment, not only in American history where we see a rise in hate crimes, and not only in a world where we see a growing tendency toward authoritarianism, where demagogues are picking on minority communities all over this world. Now is the time, as everybody who has come here before you has told you, now is the time, as never before, for us to stand up to hatred of all kinds. Show the world that this nation, in fact, will be a leader in bringing our people together regardless of their religion, and to create an economy that works for all of us, an environment that works for all of us, and a world in which love will conquer hate. Thank you very much.
With the verse in the Quran that I think is very fitting for all of us today, as we've heard from the inspiring words of our religious leaders and our distinguished speaker and senator. The Quran says, "O humanity." So this is a verse that is not to Muslims, it's to all of us. It says, "O humanity, you have been created from a single pair, a male and a female, and we have made you into different nations and tribes, not to despise one another, but to learn and to know one another, and the best among you is the one who is God conscious." Leave in peace. Stick around. For those who want to volunteer, the staff of Senator Sanders will be here to help organize people who want to continue in the work against gun violence and civil rights. Thank you, everybody. Salam alaikum. Hey.
That was hilarious.
All right.
Salam, can I take a picture with you?
This was the important part. All right. She was sitting in the back.
Samira, can you stay? Take a picture with me and Sam. There's no hurry. I love your attitude. If he does, I can take it. Yes, let's do it. Like, I'll take it out. Oh, we just get here.
You guys need to open a path.
Thank you. Hello.
If I speak right in between you? Yeah, that was nice. Spend time with you.
What's really?
Video. All right. Thank you. Good luck. Nice meeting you. Yeah, nice meeting you too. You're in, you got to drive to Orange County, is it?
No, we're going to go to the family in Northridge.
Oh, okay. That's nice. Just going to spend the day over here.
So nice to meet you in LA. Very nice.
You were there, man.
She's original Pasadena. She knows my cousins. Your kids were at New Horizon at the same time as my cousins.
Oh, okay.
The same boys.
So they were New Horizon, Pasadena.
1990, 91? When it first started, even before it started.
Wow.
That's how old we are.
The OGs. You know, I was in the first class. I was in the first New Horizon class ever, kindergarten.
Over here, right? Or no, not over here.
No, it was in South Pasadena. Remember when they had that tower?
I used to be their secretary.
Oh, wow.
I used to do their books.
Oh my gosh.
They all, I think it was on what street? Orange?
Fremont, was it Fremont? Yeah. Oh, how old I am? I was on Fremont.
How old I am?
I don't know. I don't look it. All right. Have fun today. Good to see you.
Yeah, nice to meet
Thank
you. So,
Good.
I'm glad you came.
Yeah.
Must have a tight schedule. This speech
He was fired up.
I got a motion there. Yeah. No, that was nice. It was personal. I was hoping he would I know what I was hoping for. But I kind of expected more. Yeah. I wonder if
He's going to make campaign promises right now. You know, he took a condolence. It was a condolence. So I think it was really
well, you can tell he doesn't really talk by himself.
yeah.
And I think it probably is hard for him to do that.
Yeah.
Everybody how you open up about his experience. So that's interesting your perspective that kind of came as
Just
a
a
condolence.
condolence. It would not have been appropriate for the campaign right now. And he's very sensitive. It's not like a typical politician.
A lot of wisdom in that. There's a lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah, I mean, he's very much about connecting humans, right? To connecting to someone on a human level, not on a politician. He's probably shy about it. It's more about the issues. All right, should we head out?
So say goodbye to Gina.
Okay, let's say bye to everyone. Let me see how I can get this petition. I mean, with the ones from any of that stuff, because I'm on
The car is really nasty. But
I want to be able to put my
just keep it up. No, I'll sit in the back because I don't want to sit in the back.
If you don't mind, I can take a look.
No, absolutely.
Take me to your place and I can take a look from there.
No, we'll drop it off.
For sure. Let's just find those guys.
Yep, where did they go? Let's go this way. Take care, Lynn. Where's Walmart? Oh my God.
Yeah, he was engaged. He was listening carefully. I'm glad he came. My son Raza. He was very interested to hear. Yeah.
I felt like such an awesome. It's not me, it's him. How was your research? That's my thought.
Made it inside.
You're just joking right now. You know what's so funny? You know what he did? Okay, no, stop. Stop. No, stop now. Stop. What he did, he gave him a brief. His face lights up and he's like, oh my God, these people hide. And I was like, excuse me. You're not going to anywhere stop. I was like,
You should be fine.
I was this close.
You're going to give her one too.
He's so rude.
All right, I'll
That's literally what he did. I was like, I can't.
You chose me, man.
Yeah, I did.
I'm your game.
Yeah. Started handing them out randomly.
Yeah, people were really frustrated. Because they shouldn't have done it this way. Yeah. What they did was like, there was already a line for their heads. And they were able to stay here and never saw any space. And then
I told him like you should
Forget the light, forget the shoes, forget whatever, like I'm out of here. I'm just, get out of my way. Damn. Really? I saw you running the building too. I was like, what is that guy doing? No, I'm serious.
I wanted to say something.
Most pictures of That's awesome.
I could have easily done that, but I actually had shame. I had some like shame. I'm not
You gotta
going to stand
use
on the
this
stage
one.
and
Not
take
even.
it. I could have done that, but everyone I would have seen. I was not about to do this. I could have done that. I probably would not have done that.
It's okay, it's okay. That's your life. That's why you guys it's okay. She kind of gets pushed back. Like talking.
Oh my god.
What's your number? I took a couple of pictures.
Oh yeah. We didn't. You were about to get famous as soon as I.
Oh my god. Alright, you should.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Okay, you should give her my number and then we should hang out and then send me the shirt and today we have such a good experience. We'll monitor that. Like, it was so nice.
I know. It was great meeting you too. I know. Keep in touch, and it's nice. We can go on double dates.
Yeah, we love double dates. Like,
We haven't really gone.
Like-
Actually, we went on double date with
your
your
wife makes you so much cooler. You know that? Like, that's how.
Even though you ran away, he ran away. Did you see him run?
Oh my god,
Did you
it was
see
so
him
funny.
run?
I literally was like in tears internally because I'm like, oh my
He was like,
god.
peace out. He's like, oh my god.
I felt like it was a joke.
So rude. He was so
He didn't even question it. He was like, yeah.
I was forced to go in. Of course, look at my face. And how someone like me, one more blind person. Let's go. Exactly.
I sent you pictures of your fame.
Are you heading out?
Yes.
Probably. Yeah, keep in touch.
Keep in touch.
No, we weren't.
Take care. Give my salam to our boss.
I will.